Happy Friday, everyone. It's Legita Alanaki from TBA Law. This afternoon, I wanted to have a chat about social media and where it fits in when it comes to family law, whether it's a property settlement or whether it's a family matter. The long and short of it is that social media has no place when it comes to family law and the proceedings that it entails. I know it's very common, there's an old adage, well, if it's not posted on Facebook, it doesn't happen. If I've done a run this morning and if I haven't shared my time, did it really happen? If I go to the gym and I don't post it, is there any value of going to the gym? That's all fine and well, and take photos of your lattes and your meals and fun times you're having, but have a think about you're in a relationship, whether you're married or it's a de facto relationship, being for longer than 2 years, or you have a child together, or you've built a portfolio of property together, and for a reason which is, it's not pleasant, because at some point you have to acknowledge a failure of that relationship and decide it's not for you and you're going to extract yourself from it. And that's an emotional journey that you're going to go through, but to play it out on social media, it's costly. What tends to happen when it comes to, in family law, you've got the two main concerns generally are that which involve children, and then there's one that involves property. With children, it's always about what's in the best interest of the child, plain and simple. So if it is in the child's best interest, that's how the arrangements will work out. When it comes to property, it's a little bit different. It's facts and figures, the court will look at what property you have accumulated during the time that you've been together. It's not going to be the property that you've accumulated at the date of separation. It'll be your property that was accumulated when you are making that, that negotiation for a property settlement. So what the courts will look at is they'll say, all right, when you started the relationship, what did you bring to the relationship? Was there a cornerstone of this property, empire that you've got? Often sometimes a party will bring to a relationship a deposit, and on that foundation, the parties buy a new home, or it could work in the reverse. One party brings a whole heap of debt to the relationship, and that takes them longer to accumulate the assets they have. So the courts will look at your contributions, and they will say, okay, what are your future needs? What are the parties' future needs when it comes to moving forward? How do we want to place both of you so that you're both looked after? And then the last leg, which is, whether the property split, is it fair, just and equitable? Sometimes what can happen is, yes, it's all, based on your contributions and based on your future needs, a percentage can be suggested, but then it can fall down if it doesn't seem to be fair. An example of that could be if one party has got, say for example, 400,000 and the other party only has 125,000. Doesn't seem quite fair, just and equitable. So, or if one party has a higher earning capacity and the other one has a very low earning capacity, even a percentage suggestion based on contributions and future needs could fall down on fairness, justice and equity. So when it comes to making these, to resolving or getting to the end of, okay, this is what I'll get and this is what you'll get, in essence, it's a conversation, it's a negotiation. And, my father used to say that an ounce of honey attracts more flies than a ton of vinegar. When you have two parties and you both have agreed mutually, this is not for us, and you're quite pleasant about it, and you've decided this is the way we're going to move forward and this is how we're going to split our assets, it's easy. Because in the practice of law, the way lawyers make money is by charging clients for our time and our expertise and our advice. Should you antagonize the other party, they can either be passive aggressive or overtly aggressive, and they can delay the process. So instead of, coming to the table willing to quickly negotiate and get to a settlement, they become passive aggressive and decide, no, they're not going to provide disclosure to you. They're not going to reply to your clients, to your letters. And you may be forced to go to court. So when you are using your social media, and if you've had a breakup, don't go onto social media showing you living Da Vida Dolce if there's a risk that such sharing can give an impression to your partner that they've been slighted, or they've lost face, or they've any sort of motivation that will make them feel untoward towards you, because that will all translate in their willingness to negotiate to come to a property settlement. So I'll give you an example. I had a matter a long time ago, and the couple came from a very, conservative Japanese background, and part of the culture, there's this, it's losing face. And whilst the relationship deteriorated and they went their separate ways, one party decided to flaunt on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, her newfound love and all of these wonderful things that she was able to do, and look great for her. That's wonderful. Again, this need for validation. But what it made the other side feel was a loss of face. And all of a sudden, something which was suggested or agreed to no longer was on the table. And funnily enough, it all coincided with the social media purge. So in a case like that, we told our client, you've got to shut down your social media. I mean, during this time, you don't want to antagonize things. And again, coincidentally, when that was done, things settled down a bit again, and the parties got back to the business of, okay, this is what the rules of family law are, this is how it applies to our case, and we got to a stage where we could get to a settlement. The same thing when in family law matters. We had a matter where, and I've spoken about this in an article, where a couple who were separated, they had children. One, Joe Blogg lived in, let's call it, Sydney, and the other partner lived in Brisbane, and things were going well, and they were, sharing the custody of their children. But what does Dad do? The mother has the primary care of the children, and we all know that raising children is quite difficult. For those of you who don't have children, it is challenging. And when the father posted, pictures of him and his blonde bombshell girlfriend, having coffees at cafes and going out, to different destinations, it made the mother feel, well, here I am doing the hard yards, raising our children, and you're living Da Vida Dolce. So all of a sudden, no, you pay the full fare of the children travelling because you clearly have money to have fun and live the good life. Why should I go without and do all the hard work whilst you're having a gay old time? So it doesn't have to be true. Those trips were on his new girlfriend's wallet. Doesn't matter. It's how it's perceived. So when it comes to social media, if you've got things that you want to say, may I suggest that social media is not the place for it. Many a time couples separate, and yes, there's the very the rare, let's call it the 24% where it's amicable. In most cases, it's traumatic for one party, and there's a lot of aggression, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of resentment. All of these emotions that one justly feels, may I say boldly, social media is a place where we have conversations and we react to it and we take sides, and it's not the place that you will get sound advice or helpful advice when it comes to your venting. The more appropriate place for these conversations are maybe in a counsellor's office or with your psychologist. Even your lawyer is not the appropriate person to have these conversations with. May I also suggest that if you've gone through a separation and you have and if there is a need, that you need to get a handle on your emotions, because again, in the heated state of mind, your actions are controlled by your emotions. If you cannot get past for example, the way your spouse spoke to you or denigrated you or spread rumours about you or did other hurtful or perceived hurtful things to you, have a conversation with a professional. It is going to be cheaper. It'll help you in the long term with your emotional development, but more importantly, it is not going to contaminate the pond of negotiation. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. What tends to happen is parties decide, okay, we're going to separate and we're going to share our children this way, or we're going to share our property this way. If the longer you take, say you've not come to an agreement and you have instructed solicitors, straight off the bat, you are draining funds from your asset pool. The longer these communications take, the billables, the hours, the phone calls, the emails, the letters, just think about a boat with a crack in it, because that's what's happening. And you don't sometimes, if it is really exacerbated, the relationship is very unpleasant, and one person decides not to cooperate, or if one person is overtly unreasonable, you end up making an application in the Federal Circuit Court or in the Family Court. And again, up to your first appearance, you've already spent anything from 5 to 10 grand. And that's just getting your foot in the door. When you get there, let me tell you, it is not the place that your emotions or your he said, she said is going to be validated. You'll be sent, you're in essence sent out, and the court has the hope that you have the ability to come to an agreement and present, just and equitable consent orders, which is an agreement essentially. So the longer you leave it, because you have managed to upset the other party, or you are the upset party, it means that you will have a lesser portion to divide amongst yourself of the asset pool. Don't forget, your legal fees are your legal fees. They are not part of the asset pool. So if you have to spend 2, 5, 10, 15, 20,000, that's going to come out of your share, not out of your partner's share. So be really mindful when it comes to the journey of a property settlement, or when it comes to children's matters. With children's matters, we've spoken extensively about property. There is a lot more at stake, and that's your children. The relationship you have with your children is one thing, but more importantly, more emotional development and the possible trauma that you're going to subject your children to. Now, I don't have the actual paper with me of the research that has come out through the many, many decades of impact of family law proceedings on children. What they have found is that conflict and the he said, she said, and these proceedings in court, they affect and they traumatize children, and the impact of that, it shows in low self-esteem or in depression or anxiety. It has there's effects such as predisposition to alcohol or to substances. When you have children, you've got this clean slate of a child, and you and your spouse, you've created this beautiful human being, and then you've decided, no, this is not for me. And if you are, that's your choice, and that's wonderful for you, and there's a lot of empowerment in that, and whatever reason it is your joy or it's your sorrow. There is no justification for then making your child a party to that decision. The child's already impacted by this decision. All of a sudden, he comes or she comes from a divided home. You can call it, if you treat it like a broken home by making things difficult when it comes to time with the other side, it's perceived by the child as, I come from a broken home. If you do it well and you communicate with dignity and respect, your child's perception will be, I come from two homes. I've got a great setup here and I've got a great setup there. It's not for them to have this anxiety. I'll tell you how social media can really sadly impact one parent's time with the child. So parents are in proceedings, and one party is left and the other party has gone around the community and spoken very freely and posted on his Facebook or quite a few disparaging things about said mother and said some unpleasant things. Now, all of a sudden, you've got a situation where one party is shamed, and then that party sort of thinks, well, how many people now think poorly of me? Okay, Jane, Bob, XYZ, they all now look at me in a different way. How can something like that affect family law proceedings? Well, when it comes to the mother then raises risks that she thinks, risks to the child, and says, no, any time that the father has with the child must be supervised. Okay, great, let's find supervisors. Do you think there were any supervisors to be had for ready money? No, because every single person that the father would have suggested is no longer acceptable to the mother. So the end result, you get lesser time with your child. It's just not, there's just no place for it. We had recently a training seminar where my colleagues and I, were having a chat about social media and, how it works out. And it was really, I found it quite intriguing and truthful, where one of the lawyers, she said, I felt voyeuristic, going through all of the disclosure of the other side, this is where they have their hair done, this is where they have, this is where they go for their coffees, and this is where they go for their holidays and everything on their Facebook. They're telling us that they're crying poor, but look at these pictures of them in Hawaii, and look at that brand handbag. So what you're doing is you are sharing with the world a your life. And if what you are relying on during property negotiations is A, but you're showing B, then don't expect things to go how you think they should go. You're then going to have to disprove, well, actually, no, yes, I was in Hawaii, but I won a raffle prize, or, if there's any sort of reasonable justification. But, we've all become voyeurs in our own way, and we're all watching very closely. You just don't need outside influence when it comes to your negotiations with your partner, and that's what it should be. They should be your negotiations that you're having, and it should be, when it comes to property, it should be in your best interest. And when it comes to children, it should be in the child's best interest. I've spoken a great deal about how social media can have an impact on your negotiations or the costs and whatnot. So I'll say a little bit about how maybe it could be a good thing. When your settlement has been done, or when it comes to children, social media is a way of sharing experiences, and when time is nutted out, absolutely, share on social media the joy you're having with the other parent, but on the proviso that the other parent is welcoming. So have conversations, have discussions, not with social media or people on social media. Have discussions with the person that is directly involved, meaning the mother or father of the child. It's something that you should be mindful that children grow up, and people keep records, and at one point, if you've alienated your child, at some point when they're able to go and have a conversation themselves, and they're confronted with all of this evidence and all of these posts on social media as to how the other parties conducted themselves, which has had an impact on their life, how is it going to look? So please enjoy social media, use it however you like and how you feel, or if you've got the need to share how many kilometres you did on your run this morning and where you had your coffee, that's fantastic. Share a funny joke. I myself share articles and things, old memories, but the simple rule is that there's no place for social media when it comes to family law. I'll put a disclaimer there that if you still, knowing that it could make your negotiations more costly, or it could affect the relationship you have with your children, or it could actually affect your children, if you still want to use social media for whatever reason, then make peace with the consequences of that, because we all, we can all do whatever we want, and we can all have whatever we want as long as we're willing to pay the price. Don't let the price be a lesser portion of the asset pool for yourselves, and don't let that price be time spent with your children, and don't let that price be the welfare of your children. If you've got any questions or any comments, happily please post them, and we will respond to you.